from the flight deck. This is the Plane Jockeys podcast, where we dig into some of the stories and personalities you've seen on Airline Videos live. Our estimated time en route is, well, however long these guys want to chat. Now sit back and relax and enjoy the show. It's a lot more fun than reading the safety card. I promise.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Airline Videos Live Plane Jockeys podcast. I am Plane Jockey Kevin. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in once again this week. Oh, boy. Well, I'll tell you, if you guys watch our live streams there on YouTube, you know every once in a while I throw out a dun-dun-dun-dun JetTip alert, and y'all get all excited about that, and we talk about, upcoming planes that are coming into LAX, and it's such an exciting moment. Well, in this episode of the Plane Jockeys, we're going to talk to the man behind JetTip, Nick. Thanks for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. It is a pleasure to be here.
So, Nick, explain to maybe someone who's just coming across this podcast and probably never has watched the live show, exactly what is JetTip?
So, JetTip is a service and an app. It's a subscription. And basically it tells you, if you're an aviation enthusiast, it'll give you a heads up when something interesting is coming to your airport. So for example, if an airline that doesn't normally fly to your airport has a special charter flight to your airport, you'd get an alert about that. Perhaps if there's an equipment swap and that usual 737 that's coming in is going to be an A321 instead, and you don't usually see A321s at your airport, you'll get a heads up on it. So, or if there's a special livery, something in a cool paint scheme, it's a way to basically get a heads up and know when you should head to the airport if you want to take pictures or hang out. And that's more or less the idea of it.
I was going to ask you now, why is this important to a plane spotter? I mean, that's probably the ultimate question. Someone's listening.
Sure.
Why is this important? Why do I need to know this?
Sure. Okay. So if you happen to suffer from the same affliction that Kevin and I do, where you're compelled to go to the airport and see airplanes, at some point, things might become a little bit routine. And it's the variety that makes things interesting. It's the unusual aircraft coming to visit that are really exciting to a plane spotter. So, for example, a good example of that might be on the live stream, you'll see Southwest has those special airplanes that are in a special livery. That means they have a non-standard paint job on them. It's not just the normal Southwest colors. Right. So they might be painted like a state flag, for example. They have the one that looks like the flag of Texas. They have one that looks like the U.S. flag. They have one with a big pelican on it because that's what's on Louisiana's flag. If those airplanes are not common visitors to your airport, JetTip will send you an alert for that. JetTip keeps track of pretty much all of the large commercial aircraft that operate in North America. We've got a database of all of them, and if it's an unusual visitor at your airport, we'll send you an alert when it's coming to visit. So it's a very useful way to know if you're interested in taking pictures or if you just like seeing them. I know there's a lot of people who do video, of course. It's a good way to get ahead, just to keep tabs on what's going on at your airport. Or if you're traveling, it has coverage at over 400 airports across North America now.
Wow. It's
a good way to see what interesting stuff is happening at an airport. And it's got filters and does things like that. So if you want to see when, quad jets, the airplanes with 4 engines, A380s, A340s, and 747s being big examples. If you just want a list of when all of those airplanes are coming and going from an airport, there's a filter on JetTip that'll show you that. And so it's a good way to both know proactively to get a list of what the interesting things are at an airport. And then it also has the alerts, of course, which will let you know a lot of people will wake up and that's the first thing they look at on their phone in the morning is the pile of alerts that have accumulated overnight.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of that nice, good dopamine hit right away in the morning. It's almost as good of a cup of coffee.
Yes.
Finding out what's going to be there for the day. So it's very exciting. So,
well, I mean, how did this all come to be? Did you have like a moment where you were like, this is really frustrating and I can't figure out what's coming? What was the aha moment when you realized that you could possibly put this all in one place to reach the masses of plane spotters out there? How did this all come to be?
So, as you know, aviation is a remarkably large field. I was just listening to your last podcast with Stig, who does maintenance on airplanes. Learned a whole bunch of new things. No matter how much time you spend paying attention to aviation, I've been lucky to be doing this for 5 years now, pretty much full time, paying attention to aviation. I still learn new things all the time. So you can imagine that if you're just a new person getting involved in the hobby of plane spotting, that learning curve feels really steep and it can feel really intimidating. There's lots of there's lots of insider terms, and what is or isn't interesting may not be immediately clear. One of those, part of that is I was very interested in photography. And so I wanted to know when I should go to the airport to get, very cool pictures of very cool airplanes. Right. And I had a pretty good idea of what was going on with aviation, but it was kind of a hassle. There's other apps out there that let you set up alerts when airplanes are coming. Right. But it's kind of frustrating to set up, and you kind of have to know what you're looking for. Right. You have to know that you need to be looking for a 747. You have to know that there are different versions of the 747 and that you need to be looking for each of them. Right. Or perhaps there are some airlines that send a 747 to your airport every day, so you don't actually want to know when every single one of those airplanes is coming. And so I thought, this is hard work finding out when I should go to the airport. I've got to go through this long list of flights. I've got to pick out what's interesting or not. I don't even know. Yeah. And it's just a big time sink. There's got to be a better way, right? And so I was a web developer. I spent all of my time at that point in my life. I was a web developer, and solving problems with a computer was what I did for a living. Oh. And I thought, well, there's these data services out there that publish a list of all of the flights that are coming in and going from an airport. Maybe I could tell the computer to look at that list of flights and pick out the interesting things for me. And I thought, I'll set up a Twitter bot. That was my goal. It would be a little Twitter account, and it would look at the schedule all the time. And if an interesting airplane was coming to Minneapolis or MSP, that's my home airport. If an interesting plane's coming to MSP, my little Twitter bot will send a tweet about it, and then I could go to the airport. And things kind of snowballed from there. In September of 2017, almost 5 years ago now, I launched a website, and it would keep track of exactly what I just described. It would tell you when to go to the airport for interesting airplanes, and it had coverage at 5 airports: at DFW, Detroit, Minneapolis, Phoenix, and Seattle. Those were the 5 airports I picked. I'm not entirely sure why I picked those specific 5, but those were the ones I picked.
Are you telling me that LAX was not on your list there, Nick?
LAX was not on the list. Well, that was the other thing too. Like, I was fairly new to the hobby at that point. So I of course now have a full appreciation of what a wonderful and magical place LAX is. But that wasn't immediately clear to me when I was coming up with this list of airports where JetTip was going to have coverage. So anyway, I had the realization that, if it works at one airport, it could work at others. If I'm interested in this, maybe other people would be interested in it. And I wrote up a non-disclosure agreement, which anyone who has done almost anyone, I suppose, now who's had a job, oftentimes they make you sign those NDAs. Right. And I showed up at lunch with a friend, and I kind of ambushed him a little bit. I put an NDA in his face and I said, "Hey, can you sign this non-disclosure agreement?" He was like, "Okay." And I kind of outlined what my idea for JetTip was. And I was like, "I think this is a pretty cool idea. Am I crazy, or do you think this would be cool?" And of course, he was another aviation enthusiast. He thought it was a great idea. And I'm so glad he did, because if he hadn't, it might have just been dead right then and there.
No.
But anyway, long story short, it's my full-time job now, and it has been for almost 5 years. And I couldn't consider I am so incredibly fortunate. It's a crazy thing. So,
well, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's amazing. We had Sam Chewy on our live show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about, plane spotting back in the 80s, the 90s, early 2000s. I mean, you saw a plane coming into an airport and you really had absolutely no idea what it may be. I mean, the technology of what you guys have created is just amazing. You're no longer in the dark. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's very cool. I can't even imagine. I've been fortunate to talk to a whole bunch of people who are involved in our hobby, and I know there were a lot of people who got into aviation, got their starts by pouring through the timetables for different airlines.
Right.
A big paper list of every flight that an airline would operate, where they're going, and so forth. And that seems like a completely foreign concept to me now, having only gotten involved in the hobby more recently. I don't even think airlines publish those in print anymore, because why would they?
Right.
Then it's just interesting. Yeah, it's I've been fortunate getting into it in the last few years, that there's an abundance of great tools out there. And I managed to create another tool that is, it's become indispensable for people. I've had people where, their credit card expires, for example, and they no longer have access to their JetTip account. And I'll get a phone call in a panic. "Oh, my account's not working anymore. Please help me get it set up again." And that's the best endorsement I could ever get, is if something I broke, or not if I broke it, if something I made is not working for someone, and it induces panic in them, I've done a good job, I guess. So that's good. And that's very rewarding, knowing it's helped so many people make so many good memories out seeing cool airplanes. I am very fortunate to have been able to do that. So it's wild. I can't believe it. Can't believe the situation I'm in. It's ridiculous.
No, we all love it. I mean, you keep us up to date on the live shows there on YouTube and Airline Videos Live. I think one of the most interesting things that you have currently is the diversion tracker. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I guess that was another thing. The most interesting days that we have as plane spotters here in Minneapolis is when Chicago is having a terrible day. A big snowstorm or a big line of thunderstorms moving through Chicago causes operational headaches that are obviously terrible for everyone involved in operations and passenger service and all of that. I understand that. That's a bummer. However, if you're an aviation enthusiast, those days are the best days to be a plane spotter, because all of those cool airplanes that normally we would never see in Minneapolis unless they're cruising overhead at 35,000 feet. When they have to have a diversion for weather or for whatever other reason, those are good days when they come to Minneapolis, because we get to see cool airlines and cool equipment that we wouldn't normally get a chance to see.
Right.
And so what I'm doing now is we have a diversion alert feature that kind of keeps tabs on an airport. And it keeps track of not only the aircraft that might be diverting to where I am in Minneapolis, but it's keeping track of all of the airplanes in North America, if they're diverted or not, where they've diverted from. So for example, in Minneapolis now, I can get an alert after a handful of aircraft have diverted away from Chicago. So maybe they've flown to maybe the first couple have gone to Rockford and Indianapolis and Milwaukee. Well, once those 3 aircraft in a short time period have diverted away from Chicago, I'm going to get an alert now, so I know that I need to be on the lookout, because if there's been a handful of diversions already, that means there might be diversions coming up to Minneapolis, and I should get ready and start adjusting my calendar if I need to, so I can get out and get my butt up to the airport and document all of those cool aircraft coming in. And in addition to that, of course, you can get an alert just when any aircraft diverts into your airport for any reason. And that's great too. Oftentimes those are very interesting, but it's that early heads up when aircraft are diverting away from another airport. That is a very innovative, and that's a very cool thing. And it's been very useful, both for me as a plane spotter. And I've received calls and emails from people in airport operations that it's also very important from them. There are several airports across the United States that have people in their operations departments with JetTip accounts, because we can get them information on when diversions are happening, oftentimes before the airlines can get that information generated from their own systems and tools.
Wow,
so it's very cool. It's both from an operations standpoint, but also from a plane spotting standpoint. And of course, just being an airplane photographer is what motivates me. That's the most important part to me, of course. So,
right. I mean, off the top of your head, can you think of the highest number of diversions you've seen at one airport at one single time by chance?
That's a good question.
On the spot.
I think there was an event in there was a snowstorm on the East Coast that was forecast, but ended up being much worse than initially anticipated. And I think there was something on the order of like 200 or 300 flights that were going to the East Coast that ended up diverting. And that was,
that's all right.
That was a snow. I believe that was called a Snowmageddon or something like that.
Yes, of course.
And I was just trying to look that up. It was something on the order of 300 flights that diverted. And it was that was a big deal. Diversion content is always good on Twitter, of course.
Right.
It's always good content, and it's interesting from a plane spotting perspective too. So sometimes those storms will sneak up on operations. They're getting better all the time because meteorology continues to improve all the time, and the operations have responded to that. They do a better job every year, but once in a while, it still causes trouble, and the passengers end up getting to get a unique leg in their route logbook of going to some strange diversion airport that they never probably would have visited otherwise before they can complete their flight. So,
well, interesting. I mean, this is all fascinating stuff. Nick, thank you so much for the background of JetTip. After this little break, we'll come back and learn a little bit more. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Airline Videos Live Plane Jockeys.
Folks, again from the flight deck, we hope you're enjoying those luxurious seats and plentiful complimentary beverages. Oh, right, it's a podcast. Well, then we hope you're enjoying the banter. Stay tuned for more.
Oh, yes. Always more to the story. Right, Nick? Always more to the story.
There's always more. I just have to say I am currently enjoying my complimentary beverage in the Airline Videos Live Boop the Snoot mug.
Oh, excellent.
Which I still think is the most hilarious, clever thing ever.
Thank you.
And yes, whenever we get the chance to get up close to an airplane, my children will now, if they're with me, will boop the snoot. So I have pictures of my children touching the noses of all sorts of goofy, weird, exotic aircraft now. So
excellent. Well,
thank you for introducing that joy to my life.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this kind of goes to my next question. I mean, you're a plane spotter at heart here. So, I mean, this kind of just all kind of works in, your benefit, our benefit. I mean, we're all thankful to you as plane spotters.
Yeah, absolutely. I am. I think that someone wrote a review of JetTip and said, Nick is one of us. He understands, right? He understands what we're interested in. And that's That is accurate. I definitely have been bitten by the AvGeek bug, and yeah, if we're fortunate to get the opportunity to travel a fair amount, and I've two of my three children are very interested in airplanes, and yeah, it's a great family activity going out and watching airplanes, and it's a good excuse to travel to some places I wouldn't get a chance to see otherwise, and it's yeah, it's all very good fun. So.
Have you always been bit by the aviation bug since you were little? I mean, what's your history on aviation?
So I grew up until first grade. I was living in South Minneapolis. We were under one of the approach paths at Minneapolis, and so we had all of those wonderful aircraft from Northwest Airlines flying over all the time. Of course, Northwest Airlines got merged into Delta many years ago now, but it was headquartered in Minneapolis, and it was kind of it was very cool that they were based here, and had a sense of hometown pride in knowing that they were there. And as a kid, my mother said I would occasionally watch the airplanes flying over and would just keep leaning back until I fell over, watching them go over. So I guess I've always been excited by the big noisy machines. And then in adulthood, I think is when I started paying enough attention to really be interested in it. Yeah, things, just a little casual interest. And the great thing about the internet, of course, as you all know, is that if you have the tiniest interest in any topic on the internet, there's a group of people who will be there to encourage you to take that interest and passion and let that snowball into a complete obsession if you let them.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's pretty much what happened with me. So yeah, I think commercial aviation is definitely the part that I'm most interested in. I know there's some people who are more into general aviation. They like flying themselves or gliders or military, but I think the commercial airliner stuff is definitely my main interest. So it's very cool to have been able to figure out how to make a career out of it is awesome.
No, that is awesome. And, you know, we've had you on the Sky Lounge, our talk show here on Airline Videos Live before, and we've talked a lot about special liveries. And of course, that's kind of, would you say that's kind of the main focus of JetTip is the special liveries coming in and out of these airports? I mean, is that pretty much what everyone is?
I think for the day-to-day stuff, I think that's probably the most interesting thing that happens on a regular basis. Yeah, the special liveries are great. So if you have, so that's again, that's when an airline will put paint on an airplane that's different than the paint they have on all of their others. So sometimes Southwest Airlines, especially here in the U.S., has a reputation for having a lot of different special liveries. They have them for states where they have a very large operational footprint,
right?
And they will do them for other special events. Alaska Airlines has a bunch of promotional ones. Also, they have one painted like a fish. Sometimes an airline might paint an airplane to celebrate or to commemorate a merger with another airline.
Right.
So there's all sorts of different reasons, and it keeps things interesting. Again, it's the variety that makes things interesting, and anything that's unusual. Those are always fun.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, with that being said, I mean, it seems like constantly the liveries are either disappearing on certain planes or they're popping up on new planes. It seems like every month there's something new. Is it hard to keep up with them coming and going constantly? I mean, it's just...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what most of my job is scrolling through social media and keeping up with the news. And fortunately now, with the customer base I have, people know that if there's a new livery out there, people know, JetTip needs to know about this.
Right.
So every time something like that happens, more often than not, I will get a deluge of messages saying, "Hey, Nick, did you hear about this? You probably know about it already, but just in case." Yeah, thank you. That's good. I appreciate it. Thank you. And that's not to discourage anyone from reaching out. I need to know that, because if I don't, the service doesn't work. that goes for when airplanes go back to regular paint too. You know, that the airlines are always very excited when they release a new airplane with,
right,
you know, that has a bunch of Star Wars stuff painted on the side of it. But there aren't usually press releases sent out when those airplanes go back to their normal liveries. And so getting updates, keeping on top of all of that is it's a never ending battle. And yeah, lots of detective work.
Well, I can give you the heads up, Nick. The Alaska Airlines Toy Story 4 on that 737 is still around after all these years.
That's crazy.
Buzz is looking a little pink. You know how the paint fades or in too much sun. So it's been on there for quite some time and it's still there. It always amazes me every time I see that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, there have been many other movies that have come and gone since Toy Story 4 was in theaters that have had their promotional liveries go up and go away. But perhaps a testament to the good work that the people at Alaska Airlines do in getting all of those paint jobs done. Some of those, years and years, and it's still, yes, there's still nature still happens, and whatever the erosion of a sticker would be called in the industry, things will fade a little bit, of course, but it's still amazing that stuff's flying, and you can still tell what it is. That's pretty impressive.
They're getting their money's worth, that's for sure. Disney is, that's for
absolutely.
Sure. Nick, can you tell us about the future of JetTip? Like, what's the next step in all this? Do you think about that often, or are we?
All the time. All the time, I'm thinking about it. The getting an app released was a huge deal. That was that's almost been a year now since that came out. That was instrumental in getting the service out in front of more people. The kids these days, they like their apps on their phones. And as a web guy, that always seemed strange to me, but that's the world we live in now. So we had to get that app out there. Other things coming. The diversion thing was a big deal coming out in the future. I am not sure exactly how much I'm going to get into it because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
There have been a lot of people asking for coverage in other places outside of the United States.
Right.
We are actively working on that. I know with those the diversion feature, I know some people sometimes get too many alerts because oftentimes business jets and sometimes smaller non-commercial aircraft will divert just as a routine course of business, and they'll get an alert on that when they probably don't want one. So there's a few little things we're finding, especially if you live at a busier airport, you might be getting more alerts than you might want. And so figuring out different ways to be able to turn down the volume of the alerts that you're getting a little bit, especially at the bigger airports, is another thing that we're probably looking at a little bit. But those are always things we're always looking at ways to improve it. I know a lot of people have been using ADSB Exchange lately, adding a link to like track the flight on ADSB Exchange or any of the other flight tracking apps. I think a lot of services kind of act like they exist in a vacuum, and that is not the case with JetTip. When you get one of those alerts, you pull up a link, and we've got a link to FlightAware and Flight Radar 24, because those are the main apps that everyone's using. But as the industry continues to mature, there are other apps out there that people are interested in using, and so just getting access to some of those other things. We're happy to do that. It just takes time to get that out the door. So I think those are some of the other little things that are kind of in store. But the one that's going to be most interesting for people is probably some of that service, especially in other countries where people speak English. I think that's on the horizon now, and hopefully I can come back. Maybe on the live stream, we'll have a big fun announcement sometime. Nice. In the future with respect to that, to speak to your global audience that you have there. But
I think they would, I'm sure that would be welcome news to a lot of the world that watches us every week. So
yes,
I'll look forward to that. For now, here in the US and Canada, where can we find JetTip?
So it's jettip.net is the website. It's also available on the Google and Apple app stores. And you can follow me on social media. My handle everywhere is @JetTipNet. So those are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I always try to post news there, especially on Twitter. I would say that's where I probably spend most of my time on social media. There's a great aviation community on Twitter. So
Nick, you also have an app you can download on the Google Play and Apple App Store, correct? And is there a cost for that?
Yes, there is. Absolutely. That app is available from Google and Apple. And the service, you can try it for free for 7 days. And then it is $5 a month after that.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Excellent. And of course, you can find the JetTip alerts on Airline Videos Live pretty much in every broadcast that we do. Nick, this has been a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. It's I am so proud to be just an integral, important part of your broadcast and success. That's very exciting for me. Well, we'll have you back when we talk about special liveries. That seems to be a hot topic on the live show, and you know a lot about the special liveries. So we'll have to have you back to talk more about that.
Entirely too much about the special liveries. So yes, anytime.
All right. Excellent. Nick with JetTip. Go check them out. Download the app. Nick, thank you so much for joining us on the Plane Jockeys podcast.
Goodbye.
Well, folks, we finally made it. That's good, because the first officer and I have talked so much, I feel like I know him better than my brother.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Plane Jockeys podcast, a companion to Airline Videos Live.
Goodbye.
Find us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Airline Videos, or visit airlinevideos.com. On behalf of the entire crew, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again on the next Plane Jockeys podcast.
Bye-bye.